Welcome back to another tutorial. Today I've got this gorgeous blue vase. We're heading hopefully into some brighter days with the spring coming very shortly. So I've gone with a lighter shade container and I've got some flowers that will pick up on the blue, but I've also got some moody colours, so some dark blues, some purples, something a bit different from what we've looked at before. I've looked at a Hogarth curve several times, which is almost like a lazy S. And it's always a really popular design and a design that's quite hard to do. So I'm almost inspired by that lazy S, but this time I'm only going to come halfway down. So I don't know whether we're going to call it a half Hogarth curve or an asymmetrical Hogarth curve, or whether it's got any name to it at all. But I'm going to really be inspired by my beautiful Molucella, which aren't blue or aren't a moody colour either. It's that lovely vibrant lime green, but the curves and the shape of them were my inspiration for today's design. But before I start talking about those, we're going to look at my mechanics. I've got a block of floral foam. Don't forget, if you want more sustainable options, and there are lots of designs using chicken wire instead of the floral foam. I've got half a block, and that's sitting in one of those compot holders. So this little plastic base is part of two sections which make a stand and a container in itself, but I often use them to sit in the neck of a narrow-ish vase because it often is a good size and a good proportion, and that's going to hold my floral foam nicely, and it also allows me to keep the water topped up. So it's always important to be able to get water into some type of container to keep your foam moist. Don't overfill that container. Always leave a little bit of space so that you can top it up and refill without the water sort of all cascading over the edge. What I'm also going to do is use my floral tape. This is the narrower tape, and I'm going to take that over the top to just my plastic container. Now you can take it down and onto the china vase as well, but it makes it difficult to cover. So always be thoughtful when you're arranging that you're covering this plastic container. And then what I'm going to do is add some of the floral fix. Now this is like the plasticine, this is the sort of putty. I'm going to do 2 small pieces, just get rid of that, and I'm going to attach this to my container, and it's going to almost act like a plasticine or an adhesive to hold my tray on top, but that's much easier to camouflage as we progress through the arrangement. So that now is attached on there really firmly. I don't need to worry about it falling off. If you do need to transport it a long distance, you might want to take some extra tape over the top and add it onto the china base itself. But I think that's going to be adequate for today's design. So you can see it's nice and firmly attached, and I'm going to create a really tall arrangement to complement the size of the base. Now this is a charity shop container. It's one that I picked up because I don't have a great deal of blue vases or blue containers, and with the spring coming and blue irises coming into season, I wanted something that was going to complement that colour scheme. Not that I'm using irises today. Right, I'm going to start with these fabulous Molucella, or the Bells of Ireland, and I'm going to take this nice and tall. Now at a guess that's gone completely out of camera shot, so what we'll do is we'll pull that camera back, and now hopefully you can see the whole size and the lovely curves. Now the Bells of Ireland move away from gravity, which is why they're turning at the ends. They're almost searching for the light, but I'm going to make the most of those lovely curves and exaggerate the side placement of this arrangement, and I'm going to group them together so that they have a real big emphasis on one side. If I spin that around, you'll see. So technically, if we were doing a Hogarth curve, I would now repeat this on the opposite side, so we had that lazy S. But instead, I'm going to make this side short, so it's going to be half of the length of the tallest pieces on the opposite side. And that's going to give me an asymmetrically balanced design. And to get that side width, I've got these gorgeous perms. They're not a perm, they're a palm. So these are Agloamorpha palms. Hopefully I've just pronounced that correctly. And for me, it's quite a tropical material because they don't grow here in the UK. And if I hold them alongside, you can see they're almost half the length of my tallest material. So these are going to come on the opposite side to create what is my downward movement. So it's opposite, up, and then I've got down on this side here. And this is also now going to help cover my base, and it's bringing me in a lovely blue colourway down towards the bottom. And I'm just going to pop a few around the back as well. That's going to help cover my foam. You know by now that it's also going to give us some depth. And when it's a raised container like this, it's really important that you have some weight at the back. Now I've bought these in as a florist from the florist supplies, so I've got quite a few of them. You could use any type of greenery at all, but if you think about the shape of this, it's flat and long, so bunchy types of foliages. Things like hebe wouldn't work very well, but leatherleaf or eucalyptus, which is much flatter, is going to work really well. Right, so now we've got our height and our width, and it's not balanced, so my height is taller than this section here. I've also got some pussy willows, the fabulous Salix, and what I did previously, just before we started filming, was I very gently bent them over a couple of times, and they form that lovely curve. Now you can do this overnight, and you can leave them tied with an elastic band or a piece of string, and they will stay in those curved positions. And these are going to help exaggerate the upward movement and the height in my arrangement and give me some more contrasting curves. So we've got curved lined material up towards the height, and I'm going to repeat that now by using these slightly shorter down towards the bottom. So we can cut that in half, and these can come out on the lower part of my arrangement. The good thing about pussy willows is you can quite often get them in the supermarkets from late winter, so just before Christmas, right the way through until the springtime. And when they're in season, they're quite flexible. They do dry, and you can store them from one year to the next. But this now is forming that sort of very casual L shape that's not exactly the same on the top and the bottom. Bit more of a sort of modern version, I suppose. Now we need to work hard on covering that foam that's on the left hand side, and for that I'm going to use the Florist Ruscus. Now this is a marvellous one for creating L shapes or S shapes, anything with the curves, so crescents, Hogarth curves, because it's flexible and it will bend. But I'm going to use it in shorter pieces on the side of my arrangement that doesn't have that exaggerated curve. So the shorter side, the left side as we're looking at it. But I still need to angle it down so I'm covering that plastic tray. And if you look at it now from the front, you can see that plastic tray is hidden. But if I bring the arrangement round to the camera, you can see I need to add something here to make sure that my foam is covered there and that plastic tray is covered as well. So I'm going to use some more short pieces just tucked in that position there. And it's really important, I try to remember to say it in every video, you need to cover all of your floral foam, otherwise it'll dry out quickly. And with the shorter piece that I'm left with, I'm going to use just above those grey toned leaves to give me a bit of interesting curves. So without a huge amount of flower content, I've got a really lovely shape, and that's what you need to do with arranging flowers, is pick the materials that's going to do the best job. It's no good choosing really straight branches, straight flowers if you're looking for curves and movement. Now we're going to work on that centre part, and I've got a couple of different flower combinations. You might have seen before Christmas I used some Hellebores, and I've got a few more back in the studio. And by cutting this one here, if I remove this section, this top bit will naturally form a curve. So by removing it, taking that one away, I've now got a curved material that's going to come up towards the height. Now Hellebores are in season at the moment. I'll cut that a bit shorter. So Hellebores are now in season, so the quality is really good. And what you need to consider when choosing Hellebore is that the seed head is showing on the centre, because we know then that they're going to stand up to arranging in foam. If the seed head isn't visible, then they're only really best suited for arranging in water. They can be a bit temperamental. They like to have deep water for the first 24 hours, and then you can take them out, recut them, and place them in the vase of fresh water at home. But they're not the easiest to arrange with. They do also like having the stem slightly split so that more water can access that stem. And what I'm going to do is sort of link the colour. At the moment it's on the outside of the arrangement. We need to follow it through to the centre. But I've got quite a large statement sort of material to go in the middle, so I'm not going to fill the centre too quickly, but I am going to add in these lovely Hellebores right from one side to the next. And I'm also going to use some towards the back, because I've got a few here in the studio. These have been brought in this week for a wedding, so somebody's having this gorgeous colour later on, and I've ordered extra so you can see how they work, and that's going to help create that depth that you often hear me talk about, which makes your eye travel all the way through to the back. Now that bold material that I said I was going to put in the middle is 2 succulents. These were bought as cut flowers to go in wedding bouquets, and we didn't use them all. And what I've done is I've inserted a kebab stick into the base. What you ideally need to do if you want them to survive as a plant is make sure that the roots that are under here, if you just sit that on some damp floral foam or some wet tissue paper or some damp compost, that will root itself and it will quite successfully grow. But they're fantastic for flower arranging with, particularly if you're in the part of the world where these grow naturally. It's obviously very cold here in the UK, so they don't love our winters. But what I'm going to do with these, cut it shorter first of all, that would be a good start, is I'm going to sit them towards the middle, because they're going to create my focal point and the depth of my design. And I think these are going to work really well with the colour of my container. And I said in the beginning it was going to be very moody. It's definitely a very moody and very sultry colour combination for today. Now I kept one stem of the Hellebore because I wanted to finish off that front section with just one Hellebore in between, so that we have that continuous line of the Hellebore from one side to the other. But I wanted to make sure I could get those succulents in first. And then just to finish it off, to bring in a different texture and again a colour that's going to link nicely with my container, I've got the blue Eryngium, commonly known as the Thistle. And that's really going to help again link all those colours together, really strengthen my outline shape. And I'm going to bring them starting on my right hand side, which is the shorter side of the arrangement, and I'm going to continue it through, using them just as individual flower heads and bringing that colour in from one side to the other. A design that's really bursting with different colours, different textures, all inspired by the colour of my container. And even though my initial thoughts were to do something spring-like in this container, I really loved how these succulents how the colours within the succulents really brought out the blue in the container. So there's a good chance you will see this container again later on in the year, maybe with some irises and some yellow roses. But for today, I think we're just going to have it with all these gorgeous, moody blues. And this might be my final Eryngium. As usual, it's time for me to step back and have a look at how the arrangement is coming together. Now I've taken a step back and I'm thinking that because I've got some lime green on this side, it would be nice to introduce something lime green onto the opposite side. And I don't have anything here. So I'm going to cheat and I'm going to introduce some of this artificial greenery, which I think is meant to be a eucalyptus, but it's a lovely shade that matches my opposite material. And that is going to fit in quite snugly in this gap here. And then all I need to do is hide my bit of foam around there. So if you're struggling to get hold of greenery and you haven't quite got the right colours, think about digging into your box of artificial greenery. And while you take a look at the front there, I'm just going to use this very short piece of eucalyptus, or this small piece of eucalyptus, I should say, just to tuck in at the back so that all of my floral foam is covered. I don't want to leave it too long because I don't want to hide those textured succulents that are in the middle, but it is really important that the foam is covered so that it stops the evaporation of the water. So what do we think of that one? I think that's absolutely gorgeous. It's often said that blue and green should never be seen unless there's something in between, and my in between is the fabulous purple hellebore. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. If you're new to the channel and haven't been here before, then my name is Sharon Dower. Please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell if you want to be told every time I upload a new tutorial. As ever, thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye for now.